A North Shore home just sold for $23.25 million. And it didn't just belong to anyone. It belonged to a very well-known musician. And you could say he's officially moving out. I'll tell you whose house it was in just a few minutes, because that sale actually says something interesting about what's happening in the North Shore housing market right now. Meanwhile, in another North Shore town, the same month, the average single-family home sale was around $885,000. And those two markets are only about 20 minutes apart. And that contrast is exactly what we're going to break down in today's North Shore housing market update, because what most people think of as one housing market here really it's actually a collection of different local markets, sometimes only a few miles apart, all moving at their own pace. Some towns are seeing homes sell in just a few weeks, while others are taking several months. And one town alone counted for nearly a quarter of all home sales across the North Shore this month. So in this video, I'm going to walk through what actually happened in the North Shore housing market, which towns are driving activity, where homes are selling the fastest, where buyers are taking their time, and what it might mean if you're thinking about buying or selling here. Let's start with the big picture. Across the North Shore towns included in this report, there were 72 single-family home sales in this month. The average sale price came in at about $2.79 million. Homes spent an average of 77 days on the market. Now, if you just look at those headline numbers, the market might seem fairly balanced. But once you break the data down town by town, a much more interesting picture starts to appear, because one town in particular accounted for a surprisingly large share of the activity this month. That town is Great Neck. Great Neck recorded 17 single-family home sales this month out of the 72 total sales across the North Shore. That means nearly 1 out of every 4 homes sold happened in Great Neck. The average sale price there was about $2.37 million. Homes averaged 72 days on the market, very close to the regional average. But the number that really stands out is the volume. 17 sales in a single month suggests consistent buyer demand and steady turnover. Another town that stood out this month was Port Washington. Port Washington recorded 9 single-family home sales. The average sale price was about $1.27 million. But what really stands out is how quickly those homes sold. Homes there averaged just 45 days on market. That's significantly faster than the North Shore average of 77 days. When you see a market with both strong transaction volume and fast sales, it usually means there's a deep pool of active buyers. Buyers aren't just watching the market, they're moving quickly when the right home appears. We saw a similar pattern in Manhasset. Manhasset recorded 7 single-family home sales this month. The average sale price was about $2.04 million. Homes averaged 48 days on the market, again, faster than the regional average. So both Port Washington and Manhasset appear to have a very active buyer demand right now, with homes typically selling in under 2 months when they're priced correctly. Several other towns recorded 6 sales each this month. East Hills, Glen Cove, Locust Valley. But even though the transaction counts are similar, the market dynamics in those towns are very different. In East Hills, the average sales price was about $1.78 million. Homes averaged about 59 days on market, and that's a relatively healthy pace. But Glen Cove looks a little different. Glen Cove also recorded 6 sales. Homes averaged 105 days on market with an average price of just over $1 million. Homes are still selling, but buyers appear to be taking more time making decisions. And this is exactly the kind of contrast we talked about at the beginning of the video. One part of North Shore is seeing million-dollar homes move quickly, while another part of the market includes a $20+ million estate. That's what usually makes this region so unusual. Then there's Locust Valley, which might be one of the most interesting markets in the data this month. Locust Valley recorded 6 sales, but the average sales price was about $3.7 million, well above the North Shore average. Homes there averaged 141 days on market. That combination usually signals a high-end market where buyers move more deliberately. luxury buyers often take more time before committing. At this point, you can probably see something important happening. These towns they may all be part of the North Shore, but they're behaving like completely different housing markets. Some markets have strong buyer competition and fast sales. Others have higher prices but slow timelines. And some towns simply don't have enough transactions in a single month to draw a big conclusion or any conclusion. So let's take a step back and look at which markets are moving the fastest right now. And the fastest by far was Upper Brookville. Homes there averaged just 16 days on the market. That's extremely fast. However, there were only 2 sales, so the sample size, a little small. Another fast-moving market this month was Seacliff. Seacliff recorded 3 sales, and the average price was about $885,000, and homes there averaged only 31 days on market. That makes Seacliff one of the more accessible price points among the towns in this report. And when relatively affordable price points combine with fast sales, it usually signals strong buyer demand. On the other side of the spectrum, some markets moved a little bit more slowly, and the slowest overall this month was Center Island. There was only one sale, but it was a big one, 23.25 million bid one, and that property actually belonged to Billy Joel. His Center Island estate spent more than 247 days on market before selling. Several other towns also recorded just 1 sale this month, including Kings Point, Mill Neck, Old Brookville, Roslyn, and Roslyn Estates. If we focus on towns with multiple transactions, the slowest markets this month were Locust Valley, Glen Cove, Oyster Bay. But slower days on market doesn't necessarily mean that those markets are weak. Often, it simply reflects higher price points or unique properties. Now let's look at pricing across the region. North Shore's weighted average sale price this month was about $2.79 million. Several towns came in well above that level. Sands Point averaged about $3.86 million across 3 sales. Brookville averaged about $3.83 million across 4 sales, and Locust Valley averaged roughly $3.71 million across 6 sales. These are markets where the data suggests stronger pricing power, even if homes sometimes take longer to sell. Meanwhile, several towns came in below the regional average price, including Seacliff, Glen Cove, Port Washington, East Hills, and Roslyn, but that doesn't necessarily indicate weaker markets. Often, it simply reflects differences in housing stock and buyer profiles. So what do these numbers suggest if you're a seller? Markets like Port Washington, Manhasset, and East Hills appear to have buyers who are active and moving relatively quickly when homes are priced correctly. In higher-end estate markets like Brookville, Sands Point, Locust Valley, strong prices are still achievable, but the timelines to sell may be longer. From a buyer's perspective, the story looks a little different. In faster markets like Seacliff, Port Washington, Manhasset, buyers may need to be decisive when the right property appears. But in towns where homes are sitting a little bit longer, like Locust Valley, Glen Cove, Oyster Bay, buyers may have more time to evaluate options and negotiate. So the biggest takeaway from this month's data is actually pretty simple. The North Shore housing market isn't moving in one direction. It's moving in many directions at the same time. Different towns have different buyers, different price points, and different timelines, which is why looking at town level data is so important. Because on the North Shore, the difference between markets can be dramatic, even when those towns are only a few miles apart. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing to this channel. I'll continue posting North Shore housing market updates as new data becomes available. And if you're curious what these numbers might mean for your specific neighborhood or property, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to walk through the data with you.